And good morning. Welcome back to Daybreak, the show that brings you to need to think about as you begin the day. It's the 2nd of July, 2019. My name is Sam Gituko.
And my name is Zinzi Kibiku. It's always a pleasure having you here with us. It's time for us to dive straight into press review, take a look at some of the stories making headlines. But before we do that, it's always kind to introduce our guests.
And so far you have Rosa Boyu, Member of Parliament for Kisumu County. She's the woman representative there. Then we have Gladys Shollei, Gladys Shollei from Uasin Gishu, the woman representative in that county. Karibu sana to the show. We're still expecting Martha Wangari, the Member of Parliament for Gilgil, as soon as she joins us. We'll be sure to make sure that she comes here.
Wow. All right, that was very close. Very close. You almost shrugged there. All right. Let's begin perhaps with just an overall view of the Standard and the Daily. It's all about Bob Collymore. Before we even take a look at his legacy, your thoughts after you heard it, yes, when sadly yesterday's news came out at 7:30 a.m. actually, while we were still on air.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was on air on another station when it happened, and it took me by surprise. I mean, we knew he was ailing, but you don't really expect it ever to happen. You keep hoping. And my heart goes out to Wambui and the children and the rest of his family. I knew both Wambui and Bob personally. Bob and Wambui inspired a lot of the work I've done. The art exhibition in Uasin Gishu was inspired by both of them, and they did support me for it. Being able to reach out, and that's why most of my work as a Member of Parliament is for people who are, the vulnerable people in society, to the low-income families and so on. And all that was inspired by both of them. So, I think about them and,
true,
we'll be praying for them. And it's a sad time. We've lost somebody wonderful in Kenya. Yeah.
Honorable
But I always remember this time when I asked him to support a project that I believed in, and he said to me, give me a PowerPoint presentation. And I said, I can't do it. I can't tell the story of Shofco in a PowerPoint presentation. You've got to come and see it. And he went to see it, and he supported the project. So will always think of him fondly because of that.
Honorable Rosa?
I think I always thought the darkest moments for him was over, because I thought that he'd done very well in recovery when he came back and plunged back into his job. But he was someone who's big in society, but managed to live like everybody else, and mingled with the young, and mingled with the more vulnerable people in the society. So he was he was epitome of life. Yeah, and I just want to wish the family, his wife especially, and his children, and the whole Safaricom fraternity, I just want to console them and tell them that they must find comfort in God. That is where it all lies.
And when you look at his legacy, of course, being there for 9 years, transforming the telecommunication sector in the country, as you may call it, talking about Safaricom with 63 billion shillings in terms of net profit every year, for the financial year.
2018-2019.
Yes. So, how do you rate him in terms of that transformation? And are there lessons that other companies in the same sector, or even government parastatals, can borrow on how to manage affairs of a company?
I think this can be used as a book to teach many corporates growth and reaching out to society in CSR projects, and being able to keep being innovative. And actually, Safaricom brought out the best in the innovation by young Kenyans, and gave young Kenyans an opportunity. And we've seen the great potential that we didn't even know existed through Safaricom. And that's what we'd remember Safaricom for. But most importantly, I looked at this book, and the whole newspapers, and I said to myself, I hope when my time comes, there'll be so many pages to write about me. So I think it's sad to die, but it's sadder to die when there's nothing that you have done or impacted in society. That would even be a bigger loss. But if you die at a time when you have made so much impact in society, you don't really die, because everything that you started will always live on.
There are footprints that you leave behind.
But remember, when he took over from Michael Joseph, who was larger than life. You could almost not think of Safaricom without Michael Joseph. And people and then because he was black, people felt like he was not going to do it. Safaricom was going to go down, you know, for some reason. But guess what? I think he actually outplayed or outmaneuvered Michael Joseph in terms of the different products that he was able, they were able to introduce during his time, and the success of those products. So I think he was a really creative guy and not scared to try. And if you want to be successful, you cannot be scared to try new innovations.
Right.
And that's what got him to where he is. And we can learn a lot from that.
In terms of leadership, despite the fact that yes, he was in the private sector, what is it that our local leaders in the political world can borrow in terms of leaders when it comes to attributes of a proper leader?
Many of us, when we get to certain positions of leadership, we stop mingling. You know, we are up there, and the people who put us in leadership are down there. But this was a guy who just mingled, dressed like everybody else, did all that everybody else did. He was a great dancer, was not scared to dance with them, was not scared to joke, was not scared to have fun, was not scared to be part of the people. And so I think the people he worked with felt like they were one, you know. And when you have a company feeling like you're one, you're moving in one direction, performance is actually at its peak, as opposed to that boss junior syndrome. Then people are too scared to bring out their best. But he let people feel like they were one big family, and each person just did their best for the company.
Ladies, at the end of the day, the bigger conversation here is cancer. Get this, according to the Daily Standard Nation, page 5, at least 32,900, according to the Standard Nation, at least 32,000.
Standard newspaper. Yes,
sorry, Standard newspaper.
I don't want to sue you for that.
32,000.
No, that's a new paper coming up.
Right? 32,987 Kenyans die of cancer in 2018 alone. 32,987 Kenyans have died of cancer in 2018. Cancer has become quite sadly popular within our Kenyan households. Healthcare universal is one of President Uhuru Kenyatta's big four agenda, but nevertheless it has been tainted with scandals such as equipments that we bring in, we buy, but we never use, or rather they're bought, but we don't have experts within that medical field to use them. As a nation, as Uhuru's government, do you feel there's a sense of seriousness when it comes to healthcare provision, more specifically within cancer as well?
Yeah, Bob did have a discussion at one time with the media where he said he was lucky that he was able to afford medical care and the best. But he said it made him think about what happens to Kenyans who can't afford medical help. And even now, it makes us rethink the whole universal health care under the big Agenda 4. One of the challenges we've looked at it, Agenda 4 has focused on putting more people on NHIF, putting more people on universal health care plans. But think about it. What is being done to ensure that there's early detection of cancer? What is being done to ensure that people are more educated about what could happen? What is being done to be able to even look at preventive ways? For example, we know for a fact now that from a US court case that Roundup, which we use to kill weeds on our farms, is directly related to be is directly said to be a cause of cancer. And it's on our shelves today. It's banned in Europe, it's banned in the US, but it's being sold in Kenya. So we have to rethink. It's not about providing healthcare. We've got to prevent people from being sick. We've got to make sure that there's early detection, that they're able to get the treatment.
It starts with the food in our stores.
It starts with, it has to be a multi-pronged approach to the whole health issue. It's not just providing NHIF cover. We don't want you to use your cover. We don't want you to be sick.
Right.
Yeah, even times like even the NHIF. Is NHIF sustainable? From conversations with people who know it better, they say, for example, when I go to a hospital and you have an NHIF cover and you have a private insurance, they will tell you, the private insurance will tell you, let NHIF pay first and then we'll pay the balance. That's unfair, because then you're depleting the resources of NHIF and saving the one of a private insurance. So I think there has to be a conversation. Even I'm told that if the NHIF cover has a higher limit if you go to a private hospital and a lower limit when you go to a public hospital. What they should be saying is this is the rate, and it should be the rate of that of a public hospital. So that if you go to a private hospital, then you don't eat into the resources of NHIF, which is supposed to be looking after those who cannot afford private insurance. So there has to be a whole conversation. The Kenya Pesticides and Pesticide Products Control Board have to step up, because actually all I read their scorecard, and what they say is that they rate themselves in their performance as their performance indicator is that how many pesticides they have approved that year. It should be how many pesticides that are dangerous that they remove off the shelves in Kenya. So there has to be a whole new approach to healthcare.
I think just to go back to cancer.
Yes, as you do that, Collymore was also a victim of the challenges that the Kenyan medical sector faces, because he says that when he went for diagnosis, he was told that he was suffering from vitamin D deficiency, only to turn out later to be what it is now. I mean, what do we do, even as we invest in affordable healthcare, preventive healthcare? Obviously, the diagnosis and early diagnosis is one of the chances of survival. How do we ensure that happens from our doctors?
And that's true, because a friend of mine was also misdiagnosed. And when you misdiagnose somebody with cancer and you start them on treatments that they do not need, I think you're just making the situation worse for them. And I think universal healthcare is not going to be the answer to our cancer issue, because universal healthcare, cancer is one of the ailments considered to be specialized or need specialized treatment. Universal healthcare does not deal with that. You know, it concentrates on giving healthcare to the more common ailments, okay, like that can be treated in level 1, level 2, level 3. Then when you need specialized treatment, or when you need treatment for some of these complicated issues, you have to actually pay.
And when it comes to poor referrals in hospitals, where you see Kenyans move from doctor to doctor to doctor, before you know it, you're now in India.
So I think what the government needs to do, because more and more people, there are some many silent sufferers. At least Bob was able to come out and tell us that he had cancer. But there are so many people suffering with cancer, suffering from cancer, but suffering silently. And you find that there's no concerted effort that the government has actually put towards this cancer ailment. And many people, for example, I know that our governor, Professor Nyang' Nyong'o, he was also diagnosed with cancer. And as an individual, he's put his foot forward and he's actually coming, he's got a foundation and he's hoping that he'll have a research center. But that is individual effort, you know, private effort. So we need the government to also put a lot of effort and put resources behind this cancer, because cancer is killing many of its citizens.
Honorable Rosa and Honorable Gladys Shollei, there's this conversation even around Honorable Ken Okoth himself, who we know is currently undergoing treatment for cancer. He has a bill on terms of legalizing hemp, not marijuana, but hemp, which can help cancer patients here in Kenya. What do you think about that? Is that a bill that you would also endorse?
I think, and that's a difficult one, because if it ends up being misused, then we'd come up with a whole lot of new problems. But under restricted care, if it can alleviate some of the pain that the cancer victims go through, then I would stand up and support it. But under very restricted care, because we can get into a whole lot of problems if it was to be misused, okay?
Ken Okoth is someone I know, and we've worked, he sits in the Human Rights Caucus, a very active member on it, and I mean, he's had discussions about this bill. And I know that many people agreed with his argument, because he says you can only know the pain that someone who's suffering from cancer goes through, and that they need any help just to be able to get through the day and be able to have some sanity and some alleviation from the pain. And we all understood that. But of course, like Rosa says, the biggest challenge everyone had was, oh my God, how are we going to control the fear that it will be abused? Because if we can't even, we are not able to curb the basic drugs, the illicit drugs that are in the country, then imagine if we legalized it, and then so it's prone to abuse. We don't trust our police system. We don't trust our ports of entry. We don't trust the bodies that are supposed to ensure that this is done. So I think if we had a little more trust in the government institutions, then people would support it. But I think the reservation for everyone actually is exactly what Rosa has said. Right. And I mean, look, when we had shisha in the country, shisha came into Kenya, it started being used. We are told that, and I know that we had discussions in my committee with some of the health good companies, I mean, institutions in Kenya, and they said that other drugs would be put inside the shisha. And then we don't even have a definition of what shisha is. How did shisha begin to come into Kenya if we can't even define it by law? You know, tobacco you can define, you know the ingredients, and therefore you're able even to advise on the use and be able to control it. Right. But it just tells you our country, when I saw the way shisha came into the country, it is very difficult for us to trust that we can allow anything to come into country and be controlled.
And if we still do not have enough funds to come up with the whole whatever on cancer, I think we need to concentrate on, like, the diagnosis you're talking about. There is somebody who's now in a really bad state, a prominent person in this country, because they were misdiagnosed. Okay, they went in and they were thought to have a particular type of cancer, and they've gone through chemo, they've done all the treatment, then just to be discovered that all that time the target was wrong. You know, it was a wrong diagnosis. And so it is just, if we can just put more effort even in just getting the diagnosis right, then we'll have gone a step higher, you know, than being diagnosed wrongly, getting wrong treatment, and, you know, so at least let us focus on that. Okay. If the government does not have enough funds, or we are not able to come up with the centers that we need for cancer. And I think that we also need to, if India is one of the most known or famous countries for treating cancer, why don't we partner, you know? Because there's so many people who cannot afford but are suffering. Why don't we partner with some of those institutions in India so that they can give us the technology or technical know-how in Kenya? That way, already you save money on travel, you save money on accommodation, you know, so that if you just have to spend that money on the treatment itself, I think your costs go down by more than half, you know? Indeed. So we can do that, I mean, and that is something that Kenya can work on. All right,
to add on what Rosa said, we just need to know that the country is not really focusing on the challenge of cancer, even though we know so many people are being treated or are diagnosed or are suffering with cancer who have not even been diagnosed. Look at the budget this year. I should have seen that there is going to be money put in for a special department training students on just focusing on diagnosing cancer. We should have seen money put in research relating to cancer. We should have seen money put into food safety. We should have seen money being put in the pesticides and Products Control Board. We should, so we haven't seen a concerted effort, because then that way we'd know. As Rosa says, we've seen the president and the government entourage going to China to negotiate to build the SGR. We haven't seen them going to India to negotiate just on how they can partner on health.
We just offered Sudan 10 acres in Naivasha for what was that?
We should be offering acres of land to India. I know that some of the Indian hospitals have asked that they had asked that if they could just have a diagnostic center in Kenya, which means the government gives them the building, the space. It didn't work out. I know that it was one of the Moipei sisters who I think was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and she did try to set up a foundation after that. And she kept on approaching the ministry. She was seeing everybody and saying they just want to have a place where Kenyans take their x-rays. The x-rays are sent to the doctors in India to even help in their diagnosis. The reason why Indian doctors can diagnose better is that whereas a Kenyan doctor may see 3 cases in a week, the Indian doctor may see 100 cases in a week. Whoa. Yeah, so that means the more practice they have, the more easier it is for them to, because medicine is proximate science. So the more practice you have, so you can learn. And now that all tests can be sent via internet, you know, to another country for someone else to have a second look at it and review it, we could be able to use that. So we want to see more partnerships with countries that are ahead of us.